Hello, I'm John Rossi, a touring drummer with a love of all things animal. When I'm on the road, I visit as many zoos, aquariums... Hey, wait a minute. What's going on? Hey, what's going on there? Hello? Hello? We interrupt your regularly scheduled program to bring you Rossifari Zoo news. News you can use from the world of zoos and conservation. Every week, we bring you breaking news and analysis from around the globe, featuring the animals you love and the people who care for them. And here's your anchorman, John Rossi. Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to Rossifari Zoo News, your look at everything going on in the world of zoos, aquariums, conservation, and general animal weirdness. And you know, I realize that I say welcome back to Rossifari Zoo News every week, but the truth is there are new people listening every week. So to you people, I say welcome. And to those of you who have been listening, I say welcome back. But also, like, maybe you only made it through the first, 3 seconds of the podcast and then had a pause because, I don't know, you got a phone call or something. And so I could be saying welcome back to you as well. Yeah, I know, we're already off the rails, y'all. But the truth is, it is because I am up to my neck in holiday special preparations. And it is so much fun, but also so much work. There are a lot more moving parts this year than last year, and as fun as it all is, it's also a lot of work, so I kind of can't wait until I'm done with Zoo News so I can get back to adding, bad sound effects and doing stupid voices on that episode, which is coming next week. Because, we all know that's the important stuff. The mission of Rossifari is, after all, connecting people to animals through stupid humor and bad impressions and accents. Or, I don't know, something like that. Anyway, by the time you're listening to this, I'll be on my way to Harrisburg to celebrate an early Christmas with Miles. We are spending the 4 days leading up to Christmas together, and it's going to be an absolute blast. I'm really excited about one of the presents I got him in particular, but he listens to the podcast, so I can't share that with y'all yet. But yeah, I am teasing him with it right now, so that's fun. And that's really all that's new on my end, except for something that we're going to talk about in the Zoo News section. But before we get to that, a couple of quick reminders. Make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss any Zoo News episodes, interview episodes, or next week's holiday special. And also make sure you're following along on the socials at Rossifari Pod on the TikTok machine. And you can tag me in Zoo News stories on all of those things, and I'll say your name at the end of the episode. Or you can email them to me, rossifaripod@gmail.com. Yay, crowdsourcing Zoo News. So, yeah, with all of that said, I think it's time to get to it. Our headline story this week comes from Canada, where an interesting piece of legislature seems well on its way to becoming law. The Canadian Senate has passed Bill S-15 to protect captive elephants and great apes in Canada, and the bill is now making its way to the House, where it is expected to pass as well. This is a bill that was introduced and moved forward after the controversial Jane Goodall bill was pulled from the legislature after the sponsors realized there was little possibility of getting it passed. The new bill looks to ban the commercial trade of elephants and great apes and their use for entertainment purposes. Facilities that wish to keep these animals in human care will require a permit, one that will only be granted when it is deemed in the best interest of the individual animal or for conservation or research purposes. The idea behind this bill is pretty solid, in my opinion. It would, in theory, eliminate or at least criminalize the acquisition, ownership, and breeding of great apes and elephants by roadside zoos, entertainment companies, and private owners and collectors. As far as I can tell, the proposed law is similar to the Big Cat Safety Act in the U.S., which protects those animals while not limiting their ability to live and breed in accredited facilities where conservation and research are a huge part of what takes place, rather than the exploitation that happens in situations like we saw in Tiger King. That being said, I do find myself a little hesitant about this proposed law. For starters, many of the lobbyists who were pushing for this are from anti-zoo groups. Also, the original language of the bill, before it was amended, was written in such a way that it could have been interpreted that all zoos would have to cease the breeding of elephants and great apes, even accredited facilities. While this has changed in the current language of the bill, it does go to show what the original authors were going for. The original bill also included big cats, but that language has been removed as well. And on top of that bit of concern, it is easy to adapt the definitions of words like research and conservation in ways that can make it harder for good zoos to continue to do their work. And you can run into problems with the idea of the welfare of the individual animal being considered as well, even though on the surface, that sounds like a really great thing, right? I mean, how much time do we spend on this podcast talking about individual animal welfare? But in this case, I wonder who is making that decision? Because one of the things, in my experience, doing Rossifari, doing the socials and the podcast and everything, is I interact with so many anti-zoo people. And honestly, even pro-zoo people who don't think elephants and sometimes great apes belong in zoos. And in some of those conversations, there is simply no reasoning with them, right? Some people just believe that it is impossible for an elephant to have good welfare in a zoo, no matter what the story of the elephant is or how good the care is. If you get one of those people in a position of power where they are deciding whether a good zoo, an accredited zoo, gets a permit to keep their animals, they will always say no because they legitimately do not believe it is ever in the best interest of one of these animals to be in a zoo, even if it is an incredible facility like, the Toronto Zoo, which is in Canada, or the Calgary Zoo, right? So I don't think that will be a thing that happens with this law, but I worry about things sometimes like that. And then there's one other kind of concern that I have about this, which is that I have seen multiple groups and articles calling this bill the successor to 2019's Bill S-203, Ending the Captivity of Whales and Dolphins Act. Well, that act, which did have similar provisions about research and individual welfare, has made an impact in Canada, but overall, I know of multiple facilities that still have cetaceans, and we covered stories earlier this year about some of those that had to be rescued from a roadside zoo and taken to facilities in the United States. They had the vast population die because they arrived in such bad shape. Now, keep in mind, that happened in 2024, 5 years after the passage of that law. So, yeah, on one hand, I question if the law will have any teeth at all and will actually be able to help elephants and great apes to avoid the terrible lives provided by roadside zoos and entertainment companies. But then on the other hand, if it does have those teeth, I worry that people will try to abuse it and take it too far to use as a weapon against the absolutely incredible facilities that I've been to in Canada, such as the aforementioned Toronto and Calgary zoos. So for now, we'll have to sit back and see what the House does. I'm hoping that more detailed information about the bill will come out if it does pass the Parliament, or, beforehand, because I honestly struggled to find much information about this bill at all. Outside of our very niche zoological world, I'm not sure this is getting really any attention. So, for now, I guess we'll just wait and see what comes of it. But, as with any law like this, if it does pass, the best thing we can do is just hope that it will serve a good purpose for the animals and the proper zoological facilities that take care of them without causing any harm. Because that would be a beautiful, beautiful thing. And that brings us to our births for the week. Dickerson Park Zoo has welcomed a new giraffe. Baby and Mom Emma are doing well, bonding behind the scenes. While the gender of the little one, relatively little one anyway, has yet to be determined, it has been named Gellner after the last name of an incredible supporter of the zoo. Welcome, Gellner. The Dallas Zoo is celebrating the birth of 2 Madagascar pond heron, also known as Malagasy pond heron, which makes sense. If you don't know this, Malagasy is something that comes from Madagascar. This is an endangered bird species that has a declining population due to the degradation of the wetland habitat they call home and the collection of eggs by, you guessed it, humans. This is only the second time the species has hatched in North America, so this is a huge win for the species conservation. The Denver Zoo Conservation Alliance has announced the birth of an African penguin chick with quite the story. Born to parents Guja and Kenny, the little one faced a serious respiratory disease early on, but the animal care and animal health teams collaborated to hand-rear the chick in the hospital. The medical treatment the bird received because of this decision absolutely saved its life, and that the treatment plan included medicine, supplemental oxygen, and around-the-clock care. While the little one hasn't been introduced to the rest of the flock yet, it is back behind the scenes at the penguin habitat and is thriving, showing a calm and curious personality. Congrats to the team at the zoo for this successful hatching, and even more congrats for stepping in and doing such an amazing job. Jamila, the southern white rhino that calls the Auckland Zoo home, has given birth to a new rhino, her 3rd so far. The most amazing thing about this story isn't the baby rhino, even though they are amazing, but it's the fact that labor took Jamila 3 minutes. Let me say that again. 3 minutes of labor. Every mother in my audience is now jealous of a rhino, am I right? Baby is doing well and was standing in about 10 minutes and began suckling within the hour of birth. Jamila was actually already known for having fast labor, with her first 2 calves coming in just under an hour of labor each time. But 3 minutes really is something. Congrats to everyone at the zoo, especially Jamila, who figured out how to give birth in the best way possible. And the Duke Lemur Center has announced the birth of a healthy baby boy cockerel's shifok to mom Gisela. Gisela is the daughter of Jovian, the famous shifok who played Zubumafu in that television show. The new boy, named Arcadius, is the 6th offspring between Gisela and breeding partner Rupert, who claimed to have never even seen the show Zubumafu when he first started courting Gisela. I'm kidding, of course, but congrats to the Duke Lemur Center on keeping this famous line of lemurs alive and thriving. And that brings us to our deaths for the week. And honestly, y'all, I don't even know where to begin with this one. As I wrote my initial outline, there were tears falling on my keyboard. This week, the Aquarium of Niagara said goodbye to Mia, one of our 4 California sea lions, to terminal kidney failure. Mia had such an incredible story. She was rescued in California, where she was very sick, and it was not expected that she would survive. While in her weakened state, she gave birth to Isabel, shocking everyone at the rescue because they thought she was too sick to be pregnant, and they definitely thought that she would not survive the process of giving birth. Instead, she not only survived, but she and Isabel eventually moved to the Aquarium of Niagara, where together they truly thrived. Mia was our smallest sea lion, and she seemed particularly choosy about which humans she chose to trust. But she was so amazing to watch with her trainers and to spend some time with up close. She was also such a great mom to Isabel. The two were often found cuddling together, which was a sight to behold. She loved to hang out at the bottom of her pool, to the point that I've actually had a few guests approach me to tell me they thought something was wrong with her. But there wasn't. That was just Mia being Mia. And every time I looked at her adorable little face, I was so blown away by the fact that she was so strong and so sweet and so funny, while having survived just so much in her life. I started volunteering at the aquarium because I wanted to see what it was like to really experience life at one of the facilities I kept going to as an outsider and praising and sharing with y'all. I knew I would fall in love with the animals, obviously, but I didn't really think about how much this experience would help me understand the hard parts of this industry. In the time I have been at the aquarium, less than 1 full year, I've seen a seal leave for a breeding recommendation. Our 2 oldest penguins, who were the first 2 I got to work with one-on-one, pass away. And have now said goodbye to a sea lion that I just really loved and honestly admired. And all of this has only made me fall more in love with the people who do this work and carry on after a sad event. We said goodbye to Mia on a Thursday, and on Thursday night, I was making dumb jokes while I was recording that week's episode of Zoo News, where I obviously couldn't talk about this yet since it wasn't public. And then at 7 a.m. the next day, I was at the aquarium, prepping fish and just cleaning and doing the things I do there. There were a lot of damp eyes that day. There were a lot of sympathy cards, and there was coffee waiting for our team, and even a taco luncheon. And honestly, there was a lot of quietness where there is usually laughter. But there actually was laughter as well, and the team bonded through the pain. And of course, we did our work to the highest level, as we always do. I took a lot away from this experience, but that is nothing compared to what I took away from my actual time with Mia, the little mama, the sweetest sea lion around. Yeah, I miss that little girl something fierce. Moving on from that personal one, the Houston Zoo has said goodbye to Kelly, a 44-year-old orangutan who had lived at the zoo since 1994. She was a very smart and observant orangutan who had the respect and admiration of her care team, and they miss her greatly already. And then last but not least, in our deaths section, the Miami Zoo has said goodbye to Cody the koala. Cody was 11 years old and started suffering from a declining appetite and gastric disease last week, but despite receiving multiple gut supportive resources from healthy koalas at other facilities, Cody did not show signs of improvement, so the correct decision was made to humanely euthanize him. While Cody was already loved at Zoo Miami, he was actually a part of the Riverbanks Zoo family, where he lived most of his life before he moved to Miami in October on just kind of a loan situation. The teams at Miami and at Riverbanks are both saddened by this loss, but at the age of 11, Cody was considered a geriatric koala, and frankly, one who had an incredible life. So, goodbye, Cody. And that brings us to the rest of our Zoo News section. But honestly, we aren't quite done with deaths yet, as the first story in this section definitely has some of that. Avian influenza is rearing its ugly head still. We talk about this a lot on the pod, and this time it has happened at Wildlife World Zoo and Aquarium, our good friends outside of Phoenix. 5 animals in the collection there have died from the disease, and the crazy thing is, it's not 5 birds. A cheetah and mountain lion have passed away from avian influenza, along with a swamp hen, an Andean goose, and a kookaburra. A tiger also tested positive for the disease, but is actually responding well to treatments at the time of this recording. Biosecurity protocols at the zoo quickly went into effect, stopping this disease from spreading and taking numerous more lives. But sending love to all the staff at that incredible facility. I know that since this incident, many other zoos have started updating their protocols for fighting the disease and making sure they are staving it off early, despite the fact that plans have been in place for years as this thing keeps just traveling around the country. So hopefully, if there's one good thing we can take away from this, it's that a lot of zoos are becoming even more proactive because of this incident. And so maybe this incident will save lives, which is, nice to think about, even if it's a sad story. And a different kind of sad story, and then I promise we'll change the tone a bit. Last week, our headline story was about the Sequest chain of aquariums and the incredible number of problems they are facing. Well, I have a bit of a follow-up to that story this week. It turns out that, despite being allowed to stay open during their Chapter 11 hearings, Sequest is cutting the hours of their staff and even eliminating positions across multiple facilities. Now, keep in mind, many of the biggest issues facing the chain pertain to improper husbandry amounting to alleged animal abuse, so the decision to get rid of staff is not exactly a positive one. Same number of animals, less staff when the care was already subpar? That is not a recipe for success. And also, some of these specific debts the company owes have been coming out, and not surprisingly, they are not good news. For instance, the Woodbridge, New Jersey location currently owes $381,000 in unpaid rent to the mall they are in. That is so many dollars of rent. This situation continues to be an absolute disaster, and I will be keeping my eyes on it for y'all. So here's hoping for a resolution soon for, the sake of the animals. Maybe, please. On a much happier note, the Auckland Zoo recently sent 5 zoo staff members, including 2 keepers, 2 vet techs, and a vet, to the Wildlife Hospital in Dunedin to help with the medical treatment and hand-rearing of yellow-eyed penguins. The species is severely impacted by 2 serious and deadly diseases in the wild: diphtheritic stomatitis and respiratory distress syndrome. But early intervention has a huge impact on chick survival. The zoo sending staff is such a great illustration of how the expertise gained at zoos directly helps wild animal populations. Amazing work. The Brookfield Zoo, Columbus Zoo and Aquarium, Denver Zoo Conservation Alliance, Disney's Animal Science and Environment Team, the St. Louis Zoo, the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance, and the Wildlife Conservation Society have announced that they are partnering to launch ZARD, the Zoo and Aquarium Radiology Database, because the zoos realize that what the zoological world needs is another acronym. But jokes aside, this is actually a really cool tool that empowers veterinarians around the world to use diagnostic imaging to provide better care to animals in facilities and in the wild. It's basically like an online library of images and radiology resources for vets to use, which is absolutely incredible. The sharing of knowledge and just kind of spreading of information through the internet is making veterinary medicine, especially of exotic species, just so much better. It's so cool to see. The Toronto Zoo has sent 12 black-footed ferrets born at the zoo to Colorado for reintroduction into the wild. This is one of those programs that multiple AZA facilities participate in that just never get enough credit. Black-footed ferrets are bred at zoos, born there, raised for a while in a special way that helps them stay ready for life in the wild, and then are sent to Colorado to bolster the population and live their best ferret lives. Great stuff. Our friends at Sea Life Sydney have been involved in a world-first development in shark science and conservation. The female leopard shark population at the aquarium has been artificially inseminated with sperm collected from wild male leopard sharks. This is a huge deal, as processes like this can help greatly enhance the genetic diversity of populations of animals in human care without taking animals out of the wild. So congrats to the team, and here's hoping the pregnancies are successful and this becomes a way to keep breeding our female sharks. That's really cool. That's a big deal, y'all. And then last but not least in our Zoo News section, we've talked a lot about sea turtles suffering from bubble butt on this podcast. Now, this is a condition that occurs when a boat strike or other injury causes part of the turtle's shell to fill with air from time to time, making it so they have to swim extra hard to stay underwater, or else the air with the turtle around it will rise through the water, taking the turtle with it and causing usually the back end to float, hence the term bubble butt. This is extra challenging for many of these turtles, as boat strikes that cause bubble butt also often cause the rear flippers to be paralyzed, or spinal issues that cause, mobility issues. It's a whole thing. So a lot of aquariums put weights on their turtles to help them with this, either part-time or full-time, while others just let the turtles go, seeing that they adapt to the condition well enough on their own, including coming up with special places to sleep where they slide in under rocks or different, parts of their exhibits, which hold them down. So it's kind of cool to see that. But there are also some issues with some of the weights and stuff, because you can get infections and shell rot and stuff. So it's kind of a tough decision to make. Well, now Mystic Aquarium has created a new approach to helping a turtle with bubble butt. Charlotte, a green sea turtle at the aquarium, has been given a 3D printed harness to help him with his bubbly booty issues. Over the years, the team at the aquarium has tried all kinds of weights and harnesses and stuff, but Charlotte escaped them all, earning him the nickname Charlotte Houdini. The aquarium teamed up with 3D printing experts at a company called Adia, which had previously 3D printed orthotic boots for a penguin at the aquarium. And they also teamed up with New Balance's computational design team. And honestly, that makes me even prouder to wear my dad's sneakers. Go New Balance. In all, the team worked for 5 years trying multiple designs until they finally came upon the harness that Charlotte now has, which allows weights to be added to make it easier for him to swim, stay underwater, sleep, all the things. And it seems to be avoiding the infections and other issues that some of the weights can cause. So yeah, just absolutely amazing work by this team. And that brings us to Stereotypical Animal Podcast theme song. Here to bring you to conservation news. The U.S. Congress has had a rare moment of bipartisan unity this week, working together to pass the U.S. Foundation for International Conservation Act. The bill creates a public-private partnership to save wildlife and wild places, using government funds to leverage private sector donations and support to increase the impact those private dollars have. The money from this partnership will skip third parties and go directly to protected areas around the globe to help set up their management structures and to provide resources on the ground. So that is exciting. A new study has confirmed the effectiveness of beehive fences in reducing human-elephant conflict in Africa. Now, we've talked about this initiative on here before, but in case you missed it, elephants don't like bees. And farmers in Africa don't like having their lands trampled by 14,000-pound animals that aren't really dissuaded by small barrier fences. So in 2007, conservationists came up with the idea of creating beehive fences. These are literally fences that have beehives strung between each post, creating not only a physical barrier for the elephant, but also an auditory and olfactory barrier as well, as those are the senses elephants use to avoid bees. These fences also provide an additional source of income to the farmers as they are able to sell the honey from the beehives. While the idea seemed good and was anecdotally believed to be successful, we now know exactly how successful the fences have been over the last 9 years. In areas where they have been placed, these beehive fences have reduced human-elephant conflict by 86.3%, a huge reduction that can save countless elephant and human lives. But this also serves as a friendly reminder of how the wild really isn't as wild as the anti-zoo crowd want people to believe it is. I've had a few people comment on the fence in the latest video of Emily and I drumming together, and they point out how an elephant would never encounter a fence in the wild. And actually, yes, they would. If there's an area with humans in it where elephants live, they will encounter barriers. They'll encounter fences. Heck, apparently even fences with beehives on them, which is something the fencing at Buttonwood Park Zoo does not have. So, humans have really shaped so much of this planet in so many ways, and a lot of the best conservation work is honestly just figuring out how to manage the conflict between those humans and these species that need to share space with them. And beehive fences are a great example of that. In Zoo News this week, we talked about a pretty incredible technique that has been developed to help shark populations in human care. Well, in Japan, a new technique is being used to help save wild sharks. Scientists on Okinawa Island have developed an incubation system for unborn shark pups that are found when their still pregnant mother dies. This incubation system creates an artificial womb for the sharks that allows them to continue to grow and develop as they would have in their mother's womb, and then they can be removed from the womb when they would have been born in the wild. This is an absolutely incredible technology, and hopefully it'll help save a lot of baby sharks. And then last but not least in conservation news this week, Orford Ness, a coastal nature reserve in Suffolk in the UK, was closed during COVID-19. This apparently led to the gray seal population at the reserve feeling significantly more comfortable than they did with guests in the area, which has led them to become the first breeding colony in Suffolk. The crazy thing? In the 3 years since that happened, the gray seal population in the area has doubled from 200 to 400 seals. A population doubled in 3 years. That is an absolutely huge win for the species, and also possibly a hint as to what gray seals need in the wild to succeed at breeding. So hopefully this is something that conservationists can learn from and help to increase breeding numbers for gray seals, just by, getting humans out of there. Yep, as always, it's the humans. And that brings us to...
It's time for other news. It's time for other news. Hey, right now it's time. It's time for other news. Hey, it's a segue to the part called other news.
All right, pop quiz. What is the national bird of the United States of America? Answer? It's the bald eagle, right? Wrong. I mean, we all think that, and most of us even know that the final decision came down to a debate between the bald eagle and the turkey, which was the recommendation of Benjamin Franklin. But it's not true. The national bird of the United States is not the bald eagle. In fact, there isn't one. The founding fathers never actually made the bald eagle the national bird. Instead, it seems like that notion comes from the fact that a bald eagle is included in what is known as the Great Seal, also called the presidential seal. It's the image that you see on various podiums and stuff of an eagle clasping an olive branch and arrows in its talons. Now, the original design actually featured a white eagle, but the founding fathers pushed to make it a bald eagle since they are native to the United States. But that's as far as it went. And as such, the bald eagle has never been the national bird. But that may be changing soon. The House and Senate have officially passed a bill amending the U.S. Code to officially designate the bald eagle as the country's national bird. As long as President Biden signs it, the bald eagle will finally be the national bird of the United States, only 246 years after most people think that designation was made. Oh, and if that lie isn't enough, the damn things aren't even bald. Maybe Ben Franklin was right, and the national bird should have been the turkey, because clearly bald eagles cannot be trusted. And that brings us to... Well, actually, it brings us to absolutely nothing, because not only does December not have an animal like a monthly animal, but there are no animal holidays this entire week. Sorry, friends. All right, so there you have it, folks. Another episode of Rossifari Zoo News is done. I'd like to say thank you to my Red Panda level patrons, Dr. Laura Schenk, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, Jenny Owens, and Kevin Williams. And I'd also like to say thank you to everyone who contributed this week, including Anya Keene, Colleen Linehan, Kim Cooley-Croninger, Carrie Kirkpatrick, Kevin Williams, Emily Rockbuck, Dr. Natalie Taco, Dylan Hoy, Lizard Dunlevy, Barbara Bennett, Nikki Morley, Dr. Laura Shank, Jacob Zinn, Matt Patford, Ali Malensky, Kay Malensky, The Malenskys, Dr. Zoe Rossi, Kristen Khalil, Tiana, not Tiana Bush, Ann Yoshioka, and Crystal Chapman. Now, it is time for me to get back to this holidays special, but before we go, don't forget, I need to tell you that the words Newsy Credits backwards are Steider Kiswen. The Rossifari Podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo. For radiology resources...